In recent years, something interesting has been happening in the United States. While some states are experiencing explosive population growth, others are seeing their residents pack their bags and leave in search of better opportunities. According to recent U.S. Census data, an unprecedented migratory trend is reshaping the country's demographic map. But what exactly is leading thousands of Americans to abandon their homes and start a new life elsewhere? The answer is not simple. We are talking about a complex combination of economic, climatic, political, and social factors that make certain states increasingly less attractive to live in. High taxes, exorbitant cost of living, lack of job opportunities, extreme weather, decaying infrastructure, and even public safety issues are among the main reasons that lead people to leave their states of origin. Today, we will explore the 10 American states that are losing the most population, analyzing the reasons behind this exodus and what this means for the future of these regions. Prepare to discover surprising realities about places that, in many cases, were once prosperous and full of life. New York, the giant in decline. We begin our list with one of the most iconic states in the United States, New York. That's right. The state that houses the city that never sleeps is losing residents at an alarming rate. Between 2020 and 2023, New York lost more than 500,000 inhabitants, becoming one of the leaders in population loss in the country. The main culprit? The absolutely prohibitive cost of living. New York has some of the highest taxes in the nation, with state income taxes that can reach almost 13% for the highest earners. Add to that municipal taxes, property taxes that make any homeowner cry, and you have a perfect recipe for scaring away taxpayers. But it's not just the taxes. The cost of housing in New York is simply astronomical. A modest apartment in New York City can cost millions of dollars, while even in the state's less glamorous suburban areas, housing prices remain unaffordable for most middle-class families. The average rent for a two-bedroom apartment in New York City easily exceeds $4,000 a month. The pandemic dramatically accelerated this exodus. With remote work becoming the norm, many New Yorkers realized they no longer needed to pay exorbitant prices to live in tiny apartments. Why spend 70% of your salary on rent when you can work from anywhere? States like Florida, Texas, and North Carolina have become popular destinations for former New York residents seeking a better quality of life and lower costs. The harsh winter weather doesn't help either. While some love the 4 well-defined seasons, many are tired of spending months facing snow, ice, and freezing temperatures. The state's aging infrastructure, with its frequently problematic subway and deteriorating roads, adds further frustrations to daily life. California. The Californian dream that turned into a nightmare. If New York surprised you, get ready. California, the most populous state in the United States and a symbol of the modern American dream, is second on our list. The Golden State lost its population for the first time in its recorded history during the pandemic, and this trend continues. California faces an unprecedented housing crisis. The average price of a home in the state exceeds $800,000, making it impossible for most people to realize the dream of homeownership. In areas like San Francisco and Los Angeles, this number easily exceeds $1 million for a modest residence. Young professionals earning 6 figures still share apartments because they cannot afford housing on their own. Californian taxes are among the highest in the country. The maximum state income tax rate reaches over 13%, and the state also has some of the highest sales taxes in the nation. For successful business people and professionals, the tax burden can be simply unbearable. But perhaps the most visible problem is the homelessness crisis. Cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego have encampments of homeless people that stretch for entire city blocks. The issue is not just humanitarian. It affects the quality of life for all residents, with concerns about safety, sanitation, and the very social fabric of the communities. Wildfires have become an increasingly devastating annual threat. Every year, thousands of Californians face evacuations, lose their homes, or live under orange skies filled with toxic smoke. Homeowners insurance has become prohibitively expensive or simply unavailable in many high-risk areas, leaving homeowners in dire straits. California's infrastructure is in crisis. Planned power outages have become routine during the summer and fall months to prevent fires caused by power company equipment. Roads are deteriorating, and the public transportation system, outside of some metropolitan areas, is inadequate. Traffic in Los Angeles is legendary and not in a good way. Politically, California has also become increasingly polarized. Many conservative residents feel their voices are not heard in a state dominated by progressive policies, while even some liberals have become disillusioned with the state's handling of chronic problems. This political dissatisfaction has driven shifts to states with more comfortable political alignments. Where are Californians going? Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, and Oregon are popular destinations. Many seek lower living costs, lower taxes, and surprisingly, better weather in some areas. Ironically, this exodus is leading to concerns about the Californization of these receiving states. Illinois, Chicago, and the burden of the state. Illinois deserves a prominent place on our list of states with declining populations. The state has been consistently losing residents for nearly a decade, with the trend accelerating in recent years. Most of this loss is concentrated in Chicago and its suburbs, but even rural areas are seeing decline. Illinois's fiscal situation is, frankly, alarming. The state has one of the largest pension deficits in the country, estimated at hundreds of billions of dollars. This massive debt means that taxes are likely to continue rising, even as public services deteriorate. Illinois already has some of the highest property tax rates in the nation, particularly in the Chicago metropolitan area. Violence in Chicago has become a national problem. Although the city has prosperous and safe areas, violent crime rates in certain neighborhoods are alarming. Families with children are increasingly concerned about safety, and many choose to move to neighboring states like Indiana or Wisconsin, where they can obtain more security for less money. Illinois' climate also does no favors to the state. Winters are brutally cold, with temperatures frequently dropping well below freezing and paralyzing blizzards. Summers can be stifling and uncomfortable. For those who have the option to move, milder climates are definitely tempting. The state's economy, while diversified, is not creating jobs at the pace needed to support its population. While Chicago remains a major financial and business center, many companies have relocated their headquarters to states with more favorable business environments. The corporate exodus from Illinois has been steady and concerning. Louisiana, problems in the Pelican State. Louisiana faces unique challenges that are driving its population away. The state is literally disappearing. Climate change and coastal erosion are causing Louisiana to lose territory at an alarming rate. Entire communities along the coast are being forced to relocate as the Gulf of Mexico advances. Hurricanes have become an existential threat. From Katrina to more recent hurricanes like Ida and Laura, Louisiana has been repeatedly devastated by catastrophic storms. Reconstruction is expensive, traumatic, and, for many, simply not worth it anymore. Thousands of residents have decided they no longer want to live under the constant threat of evacuation and destruction. Louisiana's economy faces significant difficulties. Historically dependent on the oil and gas industry, the state has not adequately diversified its economic base. When oil prices fall, the entire state economy suffers. Job opportunities are limited, especially for skilled young professionals who often leave the state after graduation. Louisiana's education system is among the worst in the country. National rankings consistently place the state's schools near the bottom in student performance, funding, and outcomes. Parents who value quality education for their children often conclude that they need to move to provide better opportunities. The state's infrastructure is in terrible condition. The roads are notoriously bad, the water systems in many communities are old and problematic, and the infrastructure, flood protection, crucial for such a low-lying state, desperately needs billions in investment. West Virginia, the decline of the mountains. West Virginia represents perhaps the saddest case of population decline in the United States. The state has been losing residents for decades, and the rate is only accelerating. West Virginia's history is inseparable from the rise and fall of the coal industry, and the state has yet to find a post-coal economic identity. West Virginia's economy is simply devastating. The state has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, and the jobs available often pay very low wages. Young people who want to build professional careers simply cannot find opportunities, so they leave. This brain drain creates a vicious cycle where the state loses precisely the people who could help revitalize it. The opioid crisis hit West Virginia with devastating force. The state has one of the highest overdose death rates in the country. Entire families have been destroyed by addiction, and communities have been hollowed out. The state's healthcare system struggles to cope with the crisis, and many residents have lost hope that things will improve. West Virginia's mountainous geography, while beautiful, also creates challenges. Infrastructure is expensive to build and maintain in such rugged terrain. Many rural communities are isolated and difficult to reach, making economic development even more challenging. Access to high-speed internet, essential in the modern world, is limited in large parts of the state. The education system faces chronic funding and performance problems. Schools in rural areas struggle to attract and retain qualified teachers. Higher education also suffers. The state's universities constantly see their enrollments decline as students leave and rarely return. Mississippi. Persistent challenges in the Deep South. Mississippi consistently appears at the bottom of national rankings in almost every quality of life metric, and this is reflected in its population decline. The state faces deep and structural challenges that seem to resist decades of reform attempts. Poverty in Mississippi is widespread and persistent. The state has the lowest median family income in the country and one of the highest poverty rates. Economic opportunities are scarce, particularly in the rural areas that make up a large part of the state. Many residents live in conditions that would be shocking to those living in more prosperous states. The healthcare system is extremely inadequate. Mississippi has some of the worst health outcomes in the country, with high rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and infant mortality. Access to quality healthcare is limited, especially in rural areas. Several rural hospitals have closed in recent years, leaving entire communities without local access to emergency medical services. Education is another area where Mississippi struggles. Schools are chronically underfunded and have some of the worst student performance in the country. The literacy rate is concerning, and many students graduate without the basic skills needed to succeed in a modern economy. Without quality education, the cycle of poverty perpetuates itself. The state's infrastructure is in poor condition. The water crisis in Jackson, the state capital, brought national attention to problems that many Mississippian communities face. Deteriorated roads, unsafe bridges, and outdated water and sewage systems are common throughout the state. Racially, Mississippi still grapples with tensions and inequalities rooted in its history. While there has been progress, disparities between white and black communities in education, income, health, and criminal justice remain glaring. This historical legacy continues to shape the experience of life in the state. Michigan, Rust Belt Blues. Michigan, particularly Detroit and other industrial cities, symbolizes the decline of the American Rust Belt. While Detroit has seen some signs of revitalization in recent years, the state as a whole continues to lose population, especially in areas most affected by the collapse of the auto industry. Michigan's economy was historically dependent on automotive manufacturing. When that industry went into crisis in the 2000s, the impact was devastating. Thousands of well-paying jobs disappeared, leaving entire communities economically devastated. Cities like Flint and Pontiac have become symbols of urban decay. The water crisis in Flint brought national attention to infrastructure problems in Michigan. The scandal in which government officials exposed residents to lead-contaminated water revealed not only technical problems, but also deep issues of governance and inequality. Trust in public institutions was severely shaken. Michigan's climate is another factor. Winters are long, dark, and brutally cold. Heavy snowstorms and freezing temperatures last for months. For many, especially retirees, the prospect of spending more winters in Michigan is simply unbearable when sunny states like Florida and Arizona are available. Taxes in Michigan are relatively high, especially considering the public services the state offers. The combination of high taxation, harsh climate, and limited economic opportunities creates an unattractive proposition, especially for young professionals and families. Ohio. Losing relevance in the heartland Ohio, once one of the nation's most important and populous states, is seeing a steady exodus of residents. The state that was once considered the political and economic heart of America is losing its relevance and its population. The economic transformation has hit Ohio hard. Like other Rust Belt states, Ohio has seen its industrial cities decline as manufacturing jobs have disappeared. Cities like Youngstown, Akron, and parts of Cleveland have become shadows of their former glory. While some areas like Columbus have thrived, others continue to struggle. Ohio's education system is facing significant challenges. Urban schools, in particular, struggle with inadequate funding, dilapidated facilities, and below-average student outcomes. Higher education, while Ohio has several reputable universities, is not retaining graduates. Many young professionals graduating in Ohio immediately leave for more dynamic job markets in other states. The opioid crisis has devastated communities across Ohio. The state has one of the highest overdose death rates in the country. Rural areas and small towns have been particularly hard hit, with addiction destroying entire families and communities. The impact on the workforce and social fabric has been profound. Ohio's climate, with its cold, gray winters and sweltering summers, is not particularly appealing. The flat geography and lack of dramatic natural features also don't help attract new residents. Neighboring states or the sunny South seem more appealing to many. The infrastructure is aging and in need of significant investment. Roads are in poor condition, bridges need repairs, and public transit systems are inadequate in many areas. These problems make daily life more difficult and less appealing. Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, loses its key. Pennsylvania is experiencing population loss, particularly in rural areas and industrial cities that were the state's engine in the past. Although cities like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia retain some vitality, large portions of the state are in decline. Pennsylvania's economy is highly uneven. While Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have thriving sectors in technology, medicine, and education, vast areas of the central and western parts of the state have been left behind. The coal and manufacturing industries, which once sustained entire communities, have virtually disappeared, leaving little in their place. Taxes in Pennsylvania are complex and in many areas quite high. The state has reasonable income taxes, but many municipalities add their own local taxes. Property taxes, especially in areas around Philadelphia, can be overwhelming. Pennsylvania's inheritance tax rates are among the highest in the country. Pennsylvania's infrastructure is in crisis. The state has thousands of bridges classified as structurally deficient, more than any other state. The roads are notoriously bad, full of potholes and poorly maintained. The transit system in Philadelphia, while extensive, is aging and desperately needs modernization. The climate is also a factor. Winters in Pennsylvania can be harsh, especially in mountainous regions. The mountainous geography, while beautiful, also makes traveling through the state challenging, particularly during the winter when roads become dangerous. Pennsylvania's aging population creates challenges. As the baby boomer generation ages, the state faces increasing demands for health care and elderly support services, while the younger workforce base that would sustain these services is dwindling. Connecticut, small state, big problems. Connecticut, despite its reputation for wealth and proximity to New York, is losing residents at alarming rates. The state faces a combination of high costs, fiscal problems, and a lack of opportunities that is driving people away. Taxes in Connecticut are among the highest in the country. The state has one of the highest per capita tax burdens in the United States, with income, property, and sales taxes all significantly above the national average. For middle-class families, the tax burden can simply be unsustainable. The cost of living in Connecticut is exorbitant. Housing is prohibitively expensive, especially in coastal cities near New York. Even in less desirable areas, house and rental prices are far beyond the reach of many young families. Combining high housing costs with high taxes creates a difficult financial situation. The state's fiscal situation is problematic. Connecticut struggles with significant debt and unfunded pension obligations. This precarious fiscal situation means that taxes are likely to remain high, while services may deteriorate, the worst possible combination for residents. The Connecticut economy is not growing. The state has lost important corporate headquarters in recent decades, with companies moving to states with more favorable business environments. The financial sector, which was a major pillar, has been significantly reduced. Job opportunities, especially for young professionals, are limited. Geographically, Connecticut is squeezed between Boston and New York, and many question why they would pay Connecticut taxes when they could live in neighboring states and still access the same metropolitan opportunities. Block 5. 7,000 characters. New Jersey. The Garden State loses its shine. Closing our list is New Jersey, which has seen a steady exodus of residents, particularly to states with lower taxes and more affordable costs of living. The state that prides itself on being the Garden State is finding that its advantages are no longer enough to keep people around. New Jersey has the dubious distinction of having some of the highest property taxes in the entire nation. In many counties, homeowners pay over $10,000 annually in property taxes, with some in the most expensive areas paying $20,000, $30,000, or even more. These taxes make homeownership prohibitively expensive, especially for retirees with fixed incomes. The cost of living in New Jersey is extremely high in virtually every category. Housing is expensive, food costs more, gasoline is among the most expensive in the country, and even basic services have inflated prices. Middle-class families struggle to make their finances work, and many conclude that they simply can no longer afford to live there. Taxes go beyond property. New Jersey has high state income tax rates, significant sales taxes, and a variety of local fees and taxes that add up. The total tax burden is one of the highest in the country, causing many residents to feel like they are being taxed out of state. Traffic in New Jersey is legendary, and not in a positive way. Highways are constantly congested, commutes are long and stressful, and transportation infrastructure, while extensive, is aging and frequently overburdened. Spending hours in traffic every day erodes people's quality of life. Population density creates its own problems. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the country, and this is reflected in everything from overcrowded schools to packed parks and fierce competition for resources. Many people yearn for more space and a less claustrophobic life. General patterns and trends. Looking at these 10 states together, some clear patterns emerge. First, the issue of taxes is consistent. High-tax states are seeing significant exodus, particularly among retirees and well-paid professionals who have the flexibility to relocate. Migration to tax-free states like Florida, Texas, and Nevada reflects this trend. The cost of living, particularly housing, is another common factor. States where the cost of living has significantly exceeded median income are losing residents who simply can no longer afford to live there. The possibility of remote work has accelerated this trend, freeing people from the need to live near well-paying jobs in expensive areas. The climate plays an underestimated role. States with harsh winters are losing residents, especially retirees, to sunny states. The quality of life associated with good weather year-round is a powerful attraction that should not be underestimated. Economic opportunity, or the lack thereof, is crucial. States where economies have stagnated or declined see younger, more educated people leaving in search of better career prospects. This brain drain creates a vicious cycle where the state loses the people who could help revitalize it. Deteriorating infrastructure is a shared concern. States that have not adequately invested in maintaining and modernizing roads, bridges, schools, and other public services are paying the price in population loss. People expect their tax burden to result in quality services, and when that doesn't happen, they go elsewhere. What does this mean for the future? The exodus from these states has profound consequences. As people leave, particularly high-income taxpayers and young professionals, the tax base shrinks. This creates even greater pressure on those who remain, often resulting in additional tax increases that accelerate the exodus. It's a downward spiral that's difficult to reverse. Communities that lose population face unique challenges. Schools close as there are fewer children. Local businesses struggle with fewer customers. Property values fall, eroding the wealth of the families that remain. The social fabric of communities is torn apart as neighbors and friends leave. Politically, population loss affects representation. States that lose population also lose seats in Congress and votes in the Electoral College, reducing their national influence. This can create resentment and the feeling that the state is being left behind by the nation as a whole. On the other hand, receiving states face their own challenges. Rapid population growth creates demand for infrastructure, schools, housing, and services. Tensions can arise between established residents and newcomers. Housing costs can skyrocket, ironically creating some of the same problems that led people to move in the first place. Can the trend be reversed? The crucial question is whether these declining states can reverse their fortunes. History suggests it is possible, but difficult. States need to make fundamental changes to become competitive again. This may mean tax reforms, although it is politically challenging to cut taxes when revenue is already falling. Investments in infrastructure, education, and quality of life are necessary but costly. Some states are trying creative approaches. Programs to attract remote workers, incentives for startups, and investments in emerging industries represent efforts to create new economic bases. Improving quality of life through investments in parks, culture, and urban amenities can also help. However, demographic changes have momentum. Once a trend takes hold, particularly when it involves young people leaving and older people staying, it can be very difficult to reverse. Declining states face an uphill battle to convince people that things are improving when the surrounding evidence suggests otherwise. Lessons and conclusions. What can we learn from these 10 states? First, that governance matters. States that mismanage their finances, neglect infrastructure, or fail to create favorable economic environments pay a price in population loss. Second, that people vote with their feet. If a place no longer meets their needs, they move. We also see that structural economic changes have lasting consequences. States that base their economies on declining industries without adequately diversifying face decades of hardship. Economic transition is possible, but it requires visionary leadership, substantial investment, and time. Finally, these migrations remind us that the United States remains a country in motion. People seeking better lives have always been the driving force of American history. The difference today is that we have more data, more choices, and more ability to work from anywhere. States that do not adapt to these new realities will continue to see their residents leave. These 10 states face serious challenges, but their story is still being written. With the right policies, smart investments, and a commitment to the quality of life of their residents, a reversal is possible. The question is whether there will be the political will and resources to make the necessary changes before it is too late.